Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and when most American Jews think of Israel, when most Americans think of Israel, thoughts almost always include Israel's ongoing conflict with the Palestinians. Can Israel find a way to make peace with the Palestinians? Can Israel ever find a way to end what many refer to as the occupation of the West Bank? Can Israel ever sit down with the Palestinians and work out some form of two-state solution that will end the conflict and bring peace and tranquility to both Jew and Palestinian alike? And we all understand why people have these concerns, the way in which the Middle East is portrayed in popular media. It puts a sole spotlight on conflict without, however, really giving viewers or listeners or readers a context with which to view and understand the conflict. There's virtually no background to any report or story, no historical context of any kind. And very often, the story is grossly oversimplified, without any nuance, real honesty, and sadly, often with very little truth. By the way, that's how many stories are presented on television, in print media, online, and worst of all, ignorance abounds everywhere. Very often those reporting in the media are simply ignorant of the complex realities that are driving a problem, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And worse yet, most Americans and most American Jews know and understand so very, very little about what Israel is or is not doing for peace. No less than nothing about what the Palestinian leaders are saying and doing, and why they're saying and doing, and have less than no knowledge of what the issues are on the ground, day-to-day life, and therefore have no cogent way of formulating an intelligent position on any aspect of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And in that knowledge and understanding vacuum, people tend to fall into cliches, parroting what they hear on television channels they watch, or from those who are most strident in their criticisms of Israel. And to be sure, this ignorance and swallowing of cliches is not limited to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's symptomatic of our time. People often know so little about every major issue, and people only listen to those with whom they have a preconditioned agreement. Well, for any of you who care about the well-being and the future of the state of Israel and want to be fully educated, who have a dream for peace for all the people of the Middle East, you want to hear the brightest, most knowledgeable, and most articulate individuals address issues in a way that enlightens and expands understanding. And when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the relationship between the Jewish people and the Arab-Muslim world, one of the foremost scholars and experts in the world is a man I'm pleased to say you've seen often here on JBS. He's a man for whom I have both the highest regard and great, great affection. He's a scholar of Arabic literature at Bar-Ilan University in Ramat Gan, outside Tel Aviv. And he's an expert in language and culture of Arab populations in Israel, on the West Bank, and throughout the Middle East. And he's a man who can help all of us gain a greater appreciation for and understanding of the Arab-Muslim mentality, the Arab-Muslim world, and the challenges to peace which are at the heart of the conflict. It's an enormous pleasure and honor for me to reintroduce to you Professor Mordechai Kedar. Mori, you have no idea how thrilled I am every time you sit in that chair and that you go out of your way to do so. Thank you very, very much.
Mark, it is mutual.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That is lovely. Okay, so, by the way, I want to tell our audience, because you may be seeing this program, we repeat programs because not everybody sees it the first time a program runs. So we are taping this program to the beginning of the summer, in May of 2018. And I want to begin by simply saying to you, I want you to give me, Mori, where you feel the situation, the overview of where you believe Israel is today, especially as it relates to issues of conflict. And the audience will know that we're meeting as there is a weekly demonstration along the Gaza border of Palestinians who are incited by Hamas in approach of what they call the Nakba, May 14th. For us, of course, it's Israel Independence Day on the English calendar. But they're threatening to break through the barrier that separates Gaza from Israel. There's been a lot of turmoil. There's been shooting. There's been death. And there's been criticism of Israel. That's what's happened recently. We saw Benjamin Netanyahu reveal an entire cache of more than 100,000 documents that somehow the Mossad got hold of in Iran. We see Iran moving into Syria. We see Hezbollah gaining strength in Lebanon. And we see Mahmoud Abbas saying despicable things about Jews. And Mori, there are people who are surprised. What? Who are surprised that Mahmoud Abbas doesn't like Jews. That's the context in which I'm fortunate enough to have you at this table. I want you to begin with an overview. You're an Israeli. Every day of your life, you're in Israel. You have how many grandchildren?
Number 13 is on his way.
That's great-grandchildren.
Grandchildren.
Grandchildren. You have 13 grandchildren. How many children?
5.
5 children,
all
13.
Married, all living in Israel.
All, okay.
From one wife, Raina,
okay.
who is responsible for them. I didn't bother her, but she was the one who actually...
Okay.
Well, you know.
You have real-life concerns. When you and Raina speak, when you speak to your children, when you think about the future of your grandchildren, how do you view at the moment the overview of where Israel is in terms of, when I say conflict, there are people in the Middle East who want Israel gone. You speak now, and anything you want to say about your perspective.
Well, I am old enough and apparently a little bit learned to define between the trees and the forest. When we talk about details, what happens in Gaza, what happens in Iran, these are the trees.
The trees.
The trees. I take one step back and I look at the forest. The forest means that Israel actually started like not 70 years ago. It was declared 70 years ago. The Zionist movement started 130, more or less, years ago. Jewish communities were dispersed, were struggling for life, to survive against all kinds of paritzes in Europe, oppressors in the Arab world, in the Islamic world. Every community was struggling for survival. They didn't have anything, first of all, to do together. They didn't have the awareness of togetherness, of Jewish nation. This is new when you have media, when you have radio, you have TV, you have WhatsApp, you have email. It didn't occur. These things never existed towards the end of the 19th century, when the Zionist movement started. They started from zero, when Jews even cannot speak to each other because they speak different languages. Jews in Europe spoke Yiddish, Jews in Arab countries spoke Judeo-Arabic, Jews in Spanish-speaking countries spoke Ladino, and they couldn't even correspond with each other because the Hebrew was a language of the Beis HaMidrash, or maybe the Tefillah, the prayer, but not as a language which you can write something about politics because they didn't have the terms. So they didn't have the language even to correspond with each other. Not only this, there was a big opposition inside the communities from the ultra-religious side, which kept, well, we have to stay in Golus until the Kadosh Baruch Hu redeems us and takes us and builds the Bet HaMikdash. Until then, we are doomed to live in exile. On the ultra, I would say, secular side, we had communists and socialists and Bundists and all the ists which occurred in the world. Jews were the heralds of every ideology which gave them legitimacy to be part of the local society. Lenin, Trotsky was a Jew, you know, and one of the leaders of the communist country, and there were many of them. So what I mean is that the Zionist movement had opposition not only from the outside, but from the inside the communities as well. And now start to build a nation out of what? Individuals who struggle for their life, to bring to their awareness the fact that they have a land which so far is only the direction of prayer. Dreams, something totally unrealistic. Now convince them they have to go there, to uproot themselves from the work, from the homes, from the jobs, from whatever they have here, and the family in many cases, and go, take the Valiske, and go to a place which is inflicted by malaria because of the swamps in Emek Israel, in the Kadar area. Who with the right mind would do something in order to start this movement, in addition to the fact that this land, Eretz Israel, was then under the occupation of the Muslims. Who wants to live under Islamic rule? The Ottomans. So the Zionist movement started from nothing against all odds. Against all odds. And then comes the League of Nations, which they knew how to work with, Balfour Declaration, and the San Remo Declaration of 1920, and the decision of the world. After all, don't forget that the League of Nations was the first international organization which was meant to organize the world after the atrocities of the First World War. Today we say the United Nations some kind of a given. No, these are novel things. Okay, so the League of Nations also supports Eretz Israel in San Remo 1920. Means that the Jews already have the legal basis. Why? To go to Eretz Israel, because now there are no Ottomans, the British, so forth. And this is actually what gave Jews the feeling that there is a prospect to succeed. They come to Israel and they pave roads, you know, speak Hebrew artificially, you know, in order to speak Hebrew, to change the language. And of course, with all the problems with the massacres in 1920, 1921 from the Arabs, you know, before the occupation, there was no state. 1929, Hebron, Tzfat, Tveria, Jerusalem, of course, and the riots between 1936-39, which the Mufti, the Palestinian founder of the Palestinian national movement, he was a Jew hater. By the way, he helped Hitler to bring the Jews from Hungary in 1944 to the extermination camps, mainly in Auschwitz. He recruited 30,000 Waffen-SS from Bosnia, Yugoslavia, in order to guard the bridges of the trains, so partisans will not blow them up. Okay, so this was also, and Jews, when they come to Eretz Israel, Ben Gurion those days described them as avak adam, human dust. How the heck can you make fighters? When did Jews were fighters? Some in Germany, some in France, but Jews were not fighters. Well, artillery, pilots. When? Okay, so when we come to 1948, actually Israel was almost exterminated by these 6 Arab armies which invaded Israel. Against Israel survived against all odds with a very high price, 1% of the Jewish population of Eretz Israel. Out of 600,000, 6,000 got killed in that war. Very high price. But here, I must remind something which our viewers should bear in mind. Hitler, at the beginning, 1939, he did not intend to exterminate Jews in such industrialized way as it was in the death camps. This only came to his mind in the Van Zee conference of 1941, 2 years into the war. He looked for any nation which will take the Jews in order to have Europe Judenrein, clean of Jews. And you might remember the St. Louis ship, which went to all the harbors of the Atlantic, Cuba, United States, Canada, and was rejected. The Canadian Minister of Immigration those days said that none are too many from that ship, to that degree. However, the only country in the world who had some obligation to do something with the Jews was Britain, because Britain was obliged by the mandate to allow Jewish migration to Eretz Israel. And the British did not stand to their obligation. Listen, Mark, if the British allowed Jews from Europe to come en masse to Eretz Israel, most probably there wouldn't be such a Holocaust. It is chilly to think about this, that the British actually were passive, oh no, not only passive, but active.
They were complicit.
Partners.
They were complicit.
Because if they let the Jews from Europe come to Eretz Israel in big numbers, most probably the Holocaust would not be in such magnitude as it was, and the extermination of Jews was not in such a industrialized, terrifying way which it was. Of course, here they burnt a shul with Jews inside, barn, or killed Jews arbitrarily. Yes, but not such a machine of extermination if the British would allow Jews to come to Eretz Israel. And unfortunately, neither the state of Israel nor Jews in Britain and other places as well remember the role of the British in pushing Hitler to exterminate Jews. And I'm not trying to reduce his responsibility, but we should always remember those who actually pushed him to decide to exterminate Jews in such a way as he did. However, against all odds, Israel succeeded to survive in that bloody war and wars afterwards in 56, 67, even the attrition war between 69 and 70, the Yom Kippur War. In spite of the surprise which we were caught, we succeeded to turn the table over the others. And 1982, and so many wars we went to. And between the big wars, we had small war with terrorists, Fidayin, all kinds of names which they had through the years. So we never enjoyed even one day of real peace in that area. And in spite of this, Israel today is in the front line of the OECD, the developed countries. High tech. We changed the economy from the economy of the oranges to economy of chips. Means not potato chips, electronic chips. We succeeded to build an army which deters Arab countries to a degree that even Egypt, the biggest Arab country, made peace with us. Not because they love us, not because they understood that Israel is invincible. So let's give Israel peace. Why die? Let's live with Israel rather than die on the Israeli borders. Jordan as well. And those who see the Oslo agreements of 1993 could view this also as a kind of a peace. I'm not sure, but never mind. But definitely, you see that. And today, Saudi Arabia, with all kinds of rumors about relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, the whole thing is changed. And if you see this picture, means the forest, not only the details about Gaza, and you see from which point the Jewish people, not the Israelis, the Jewish people started the biggest project of the Jewish people since the destruction of the temple of the year 70 CE. There was never such a big project like the State of Israel project of the Jewish nation. Don't forget the JNF, which started to act in 1901. We are already 117 years with the monetary arm of the Jewish people, the blue pushke, which actually enabled this state, to come to reality. So this is what I mean, that Israel is not 70 years old. Israel is something which at least 130 years, which is based actually on the fact that we were there in Eretz Israel 2,000 years ago. And don't forget that King Solomon is dated to 3,000 years ago because it's minus 1,000 CE. So this is how the forest. And we have to look at this. When you look at this, many things become very small. Gaza, okay, we'll deal with Gaza. We dealt with Egypt, so we can't deal with Gaza. We dealt with much bigger challenges. If you remember the zero, which we started towards the end of the 19th century. Look at what happens today. So if you put things in proportion, this is the picture, in my view, which everybody should see.
Okay. It is fascinating the way you describe it. And by the way, you did a fabulous summary of the sweep of Jewish history as it applies to Eretz Yisrael at the end of the 19th century through the 20th century and for the first couple of decades of the 21st century. Gorgeous. I hope everybody sort of followed it. You also said in passing, permit me just to emphasize it, the legal basis,
Yes.
the legal basis of the State of Israel comes from the League of Nations,
Right.
which ultimately created a number of Middle East countries, not just Israel. And anybody who ever questions Israel's legitimacy has to question Syria's legitimacy and Iraq's legitimacy, which is no one ever says that. But the reality is there was an international world decision that there should be one Jewish polity in the Middle East, this little teeny tiny Eretz Israel. And then you describe beautifully the sweep. At the same time, Mori, that doesn't mean that today, as we tape in 2018, people don't have concerns
Of course.
about, again, I began by talking about the Palestinian conflict. And there are people who come here at this table all the time. Some of them complain bitterly that Israel isn't doing enough to make peace. That and some of the things you've pointed out in prior visits here. We have talked about what the Palestinian goal is. And I'm talking about Palestinian leadership, not necessarily rank and file. And once you brought here a scarf of some kind that had on it the logo of the Palestinian Authority, which basically said both sides of, it was basically from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Yes, you carry this with you everywhere you go.
I constantly go with this. And this is the PLO flag. It's not
PLO,
Hamas.
thank you.
Palestine is in the whole country.
Yes.
From the river to the sea.
Okay.
Palestine will be free.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
And of course, after Al-Quds Lana, Jerusalem is ours. And they understand the connection. Because they understand if they have Jerusalem, they will have the whole country. Because Jews will lose hope. If Jerusalem, the center of Jewish life, is being extracted from the Jews, so Jews will run away back to Morocco, back to Poland, back to wherever they came from, and they have the whole country. So why give Israel peace? Because if you give Israel peace, even if part of Palestine, means as they call it, Israel will have some kind of a insurance policy. But if we take Jerusalem, and this, by the way, is the significance of the moving of the embassy of the Americans to Jerusalem, because it actually gives Israel the seal of approval of the most important country in the world, the United States of America. And they are afraid that some countries will follow, like the Czech Republic, Romania, Paraguay.
But there's no question other countries will follow.
Of course. And this is what makes them afraid. our neighbors. Because every embassy which moves to Jerusalem, it means that another nation recognizes the Jewish past, the Jewish history, the Jewish relation to Jerusalem, means to the whole land of Israel. And actually, Israel today becomes a legitimate state on what they claim to be a Palestinian soil, which belongs to Islam, by the way, because according to Islam, there is any land has only one-way ticket to come into Islam, not to go out from Islam. So, in this way, the occupation will be forever occupation of, as they call it. And this is what makes them afraid. And not only this, they see what happens today as Judeo-Christian conspiracy against Islam. Because, and don't forget, both Jews and Christians should live under the yoke of Islam as dhimmis. And here comes this Christian, President Trump, and conspires with the Jews to what? To recognize Jerusalem as Jewish? Who the heck gave him the permission to recognize Jerusalem as Jewish? What is it? His? So this is why they objected in such a way, because it actually gives Israel the image of invincible, because the world stands behind Israel as a legitimate state on that land with Jerusalem as its capital. And this is what actually frightens them, because it also has some kind of threat on Islam. Because Islam came to the world to change the worldview of religions, means to nullify Judaism and Christianity, to turn them into din batil, as they call in Arabic, dat betela, null and void religion, while only Islam is a valid din haq, means religion of truth. There is a verse in the Quran which says, Inna dina inda Allah al-Islam, means the religion at Allah's is only Islam. Means Judaism and Christianity are null and void, and Jews and Christians, because they still stick to religions which are null and void, should live under the yoke of Islam as dhimmis. All of a sudden, Jews come back to Eretz Israel, come back to Jerusalem, and God forbid, Allah forbid, they want to pray on the Temple Mount. And this means some kind of resurrection of Judaism after it was cancelled by Islam. And for them, it is some kind of a theological threat on Islam before it is anything connected to religious
Okay, and
territory.
I want to push you. Who feels this way? Is it the rank and file average Muslim? Does a Muslim Palestinian living in Ramallah or living in Nablus understand the theology you've described? Or are we talking about the elite clerics in the Muslim world?
No, if you listen to Friday's sermons, and I have hundreds of them recorded at home, which I recorded from Palestinian radio stations, this is the message. The Jews have no right, neither to a state, no statehood, army, police, all these things Jews are not eligible to have, because they should live under the Islamic yoke.
Okay, this is what is being preached in mosques?
Yes.
Okay, does any...
Books, websites, pamphlets.
Okay. Is anyone preaching in the Muslim world some kind of reconciliation with the Jews and what is the equivalent of the Jewish Shalom Achshav, peace now, that we should live together and share the land in some form?
Here and there, yes, especially Sufis. Sufi Islam is some kind of 5%, 6% of the Muslims worldwide. Sufis are spiritual Muslims. All they have is Allah. They don't deal with worldly issues, governments, Jews, Christians.
Where do they live?
They are Sunnis all over the world. There are communities, small communities, almost everywhere.
Do they live on the West Bank as well?
There are some Sufi groups as well, but usually, look, they are peaceful as doves, sheep. They do not hurt anybody. They do not coerce anyone. They do not maintain power. They are not terrorists, because they delegate everything to Allah. Allah is the judge. Allah knows what is in humans' hearts. They are not the judges, not the executioners of Allah, of course. And they delegate everything to Allah because Allah is omnipotent. He can do whatever He likes. We are not, we don't know what happens in people's hearts. This is actually the Sufi approach. According to the Sufi, they have no problem to live with Jews, under Jews. If Allah decided that we should live with Jews, this is His decision. Who are we to evaluate what Allah wants or not? We live our life.
Okay, but they do not have power inside the Palestinian world.
They don't have power anywhere because they are like, as I told you, like sheep.
Okay, and you say they're about 5%. That means 95% have a different orientation. I ask you again, if we had here at this table average Palestinians, cab drivers, and own their little shops, and they're trying to make a living, and they have grandchildren of their own, do they care about the ideology you described, or is it only the elite intellectual leadership, both academic as well as political?
Look, there is a joke which goes on Judea and Samaria in the Arab communities, cities, villages, that every Palestinian wants two things. One is a Palestinian state, and the other is Israeli identity card. Okay? Means life, making living is much more important than anything else. The man in the street wants to live. He doesn't deal with politics. He doesn't deal with Israel. He wants, بدنا نعيش, as I say in Arabic. We want to live. Okay? Darf me leben, as we said in Yiddish. The same thing, there were same words. However, the minority, even if, let's say, the minority are radicals, whenever there is some kind of encounter between radicals and non-violent, always the radicals will take over because they are violent. And this is the problem. Even 1 of 1,000 violent men against 1,000 people who are not violent, he will prevail. Why? Because he has a pistol with 6 bullets. No more. He will coerce 1,000 to do what he wants, although he can hurt only 6 people. 1,000 will follow him unwillingly, but they will follow because they are not violent. So this is the problem. Even if we say that it's a minority, still we are talking about violent minority. And when violence is introduced, violence takes over.
Okay, and where is Mahmoud Abbas in this entire description?
Mahmoud Abbas is a very clever guy. He understood the mistakes which Arafat, his predecessor, made. He was his deputy. And he understood that Arafat succeeded by his behavior to give the Palestinians the image of terrorists, almost globally. And this was a mistake because when people are depicted as terrorists, no nation, no politician wants to associate with them, no wants to support them, because what? Are you supporting terrorists? So he understood this mistake by Arafat. And he decided to go the other way, to make face as if they are peaceful, as if they don't want to kill any Israeli, but wage another kind of war against Israel to delegitimize Israel in the United Nations, in UNESCO, in all kinds of other international organizations, and by depicting Jews as people who collaborated with Hitler, as recently he said. So he actually takes a non-violent way, as if it's non-violent way, but to drag the carpet under the feet of the Israelis, totally. And this was his very witty way how to fight Israel in ways which will not depict him as a terrorist. But the damage which he brought to Israel by supporting the BDS, all kinds of things like this, or declarations that Jerusalem doesn't belong to Judaism, only to Christianity and Islam, and all kinds of things which the Palestinians pushed with the others, I think brought damage to Israel, not only within the nations, even within Jews. Even within Jews, succeeded to give Israel such a bad face. And definitely, from my point of view, he is, I would say, more dangerous to Israel than Arafat. Because Arafat, when somebody comes and kills you, at least you know he's a killer, and you deal with him as a killer. But if somebody comes in such a stealthy way, tries to undermine your existence, with a smile on his face, what are you going to do with it? However, he built actually a house of cards with all kinds of dreams, which the Palestinian dream is actually. Like Jerusalem will be theirs, as it shows on this thing. That the refugees will be refugees forever, and one day they will come and for the right of return and so forth. And many other dreams which Israel will never give him, but he built all these dreams. Here comes President Trump and pulls these cards one by one. First of all, Jerusalem, recognize Jerusalem as Jewish. Secondly, he doesn't give money, at least not as much as was given in the past, to perpetuate the Palestinian refugeehood. And they are going to lose this thing. Don't forget that they actually lost the Palestinian refugees in Syria. Nobody knows where they are today. They dispersed all over the world. And like of almost 500,000 refugees who were in Syria dispersed. And where they will return from. So, and they actually see that card after card in this house of cards is being pulled out, either by Israel or by the Americans, and the whole thing actually collapsed. Mahmoud Abbas, nobody knows who will be his successor. Hamas are threatening to take the PLO. And actually the Palestinian dream to establish a nation actually is evaporating, because in the Middle East, homeland is not the borders which the British drew or the French. Homeland is the village where you live. Because if you move to the neighboring village, you are viewed as nicht kanunzeres, not from us. Mush minna, as they say in Arabic. Even if you move 5 kilometers, because the homeland is your village. This is the mindset in the Middle East. Unlike we Israelis, if you go to Metula in the north or to Eilat in the south, you came to Israel. Because in our mind, the land entirely is the homeland. So wherever a Jew comes and settles, he is in the homeland. In the Arab world, the mindset is totally different. The homeland is the family, means the clan, and the village or the neighborhood which the clan lives in.
Okay, there's so many things. Every time you speak, there are 18 things I want to ask you, and I don't know, I don't want to stop you every second. I had something I wanted to ask you. I'm going to put it on hold because I want you to follow this up one moment. I've learned so much from you over your many times here, and we've had the good fortune to be able to cover you when you speak in the area. One of the things you made clear to me in one of your earlier meetings with me was that unlike the Jewish people, which is in some way one large family, doesn't mean we don't have disputes, doesn't mean that, but it's one large family. In the Palestinian world, in the Arab Muslim world, you explained to me it's more about tribes. It's not one cohesive identity. And that one of the problems Israel has, if it ever wants to, if there was ever going to be peace, was that they weren't making peace. They are not challenged by making peace with one people. It's not simply that you have Gaza and you have the West Bank, you have Hamas and you have Fatah. It's much more subtle than that. It's tribe and clan, and that on the West Bank, if you live in Nablus, you may not be able to marry somebody from Ramallah.
Of course.
And that you say, of course, most American Jews and most Americans don't understand that. And that is why, as you've described on another occasion, your solution is, if there was ever going to be a way for Israelis and Jews and Palestinians to live together, it was going to be in an Emirate system, where you would have more than one Palestinian community. You would have You said 8.
Yes.
Because there are 8 literal cantons of Palestinians.
Cities.
Cities, okay. So without not going into detail, but anybody who never heard you say that, explain to our audience the difference between nation concept and how the Palestinian views him or herself as a tribe and clan, and why that's problematic for the state of Israel.
Well, if again you take a step backwards and you look at the Middle East, you see two kinds of states: the successful kind and the failure. The failures are Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Algeria, potentially Jordan as well, maybe Morocco as well, because all these countries are conglomerates, are unconsolidated gatherings of tribes, means clans, ethnic groups like Kurds, Arabs, Turkmens, Berbers, religious groups like Muslims, Christians, Yazidis, as we say in Iraq, Alawis, Druze, and many others, and sectarian groups, Shia, Sunnah, and so forth. Whenever you take many groups and you try to make a nation out of them by the identity card, it fails, because people remain loyal to the traditional framework because they live in these frameworks. Unlike here in America, which people came as individuals, Jews, non-Jews, people from Europe, from South America, from wherever they came, and they share the same place, they live in the same place, they work in the same place, they share the public sphere. So, you know, with the years, the melting pot works, especially after 2, 3 generations, and we unfortunately see it with mixed marriage as well within us Jews. However, in the Middle East, people continue to live, in many cases, as they lived for centuries, and not millennia, as groups. So why they have no motive to melt into each other? Why the heck? Why should we? They are our enemies. So the state, the citizenship never made a nation, unlike here. Once you get the papers, you become an American. They're not. You could be Iraqi citizen, yet you are Kurdish. Iraqi citizen, you are Arab. You speak in different language, you wear different clothes, your mindset is different. So this is why there is no Iraqi nation, there is no Syrian nation, no Libyan nation. Citizens, yes, but not a nation. Yemenite nation. And this is, by the way, how Iran, if we come to these days, succeeds to infiltrate into these societies because they are anyway fragmented, so they can buy all kinds of groups against the others. And this is the source of all evil in the Middle East. However, the successful Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Ras Al Khaimah, and actually the Gulf Emirates, who are successful not because of the oil. Dubai has no oil. Dubai is a very rich country with maybe 1% of the GDP based on oil and gas. Iraq has a lot of oil, and Iraq is a mayhem. Dubai without the oil is a heaven. Libya is a hell with all the oil. Okay? So the fact is, means the reason why those Emirates are so successful is because every one of them is one single tribe. Al-Sabah in Kuwait, Al-Thani in Qatar, Al is a tribe. Comes from the word Ahal, which is Ohel, tent. In Hebrew, the Beit Israel, the house of Israel, they say the tent of Sabah. The same thing. Al-Nihyan is Abu Dhabi, for example. And this is how everyone has his own Al. And when the society is homogeneous, you can create on this a nice functioning government without elections. They don't need elections because they have leadership, real leadership of the tribe. And on this, you can have skyscrapers with helicopter pads on them because the people are rich. While in Iraq, because the society is fragmented, according to tribal and all kinds of lines, and so the government cannot function, and the economy is in a collapse. So this is actually the situation of the Middle East. Now, what we should do, what should we do with the Palestinians? If they are, as they are, clannish societies, in the West Bank and in Gaza as well. So definitely we should follow the Emirate paradigm and establish an emirate in each and every one of the cities, of the Arab cities of Judea and Samaria. Altogether 7, Hebron, Ramallah, Kalkilia, Tulkarem, Shechem, Nablus, Jenin, and one in Gaza. In Gaza, I have news for you. Gaza is a state, whether we like them or not. They have government, they have borders, they have judicial system, they have military industry, they have an army, they have police, they have every organ which a state needs, they have. Of course, they have some issues with us. We had issues with Egypt for many years. So they are a state, because something which looks like a state, functions like a state, is not a duck. It is a state. So this is why Israel should recognize all these towns as states, emirates, annex to Israel the rural areas, offer Israeli citizenship to the villagers, who are like 10% of the population, and this will give them stability, will give us security, ובא לציון גואל. And this is the only way how to create peace by sociology, based on sociology, because Syria, Iraq are not based on sociology. They are based on dreams about nations which do not exist.
Okay. You are an Orthodox Jew.
Yes.
But you're willing for there to be these emirates in Judea, Samaria.
Yes.
Okay. And you're willing to do that because?
Because I care about Jewish life. I want to save Israel as a Jewish state with significant Jewish majority. And we do have 20% of our citizens Arabs. And with this, it will be 22 or 23%.
Okay.
Not a big difference. We can deal with this. It's okay, even if they vote for the Knesset, the villagers.
Yes, I understand.
While
okay.
the cities are independent.
Okay. And I've said this to you before. I'm saying it a little differently this time. I don't ever hear Israelis speak this way. I don't hear Netanyahu speaking this way. I don't hear Lieberman speaking this way. I don't hear Naftali Bennett speaking this way. Only you. I also never hear a Palestinian leader say anything remotely like you've just said. And so I say to him, I've said this to you before, it sounds to me like a very intelligent and fair way to deal with it. Here you are, an Orthodox Jew, and you're saying the land is not more important than the benefits that would accrue at the moment to the existing state of Israel, and you want the Palestinian people to have theirs as well. But as fair as it sounds to me, as intelligent as it sounds, Mori, I don't hear anybody else saying it. Why?
Well, so far, 4 Israeli ministers, who are today ministers, invited me in their own initiative to hear about this idea.
They wanted you to speak about it.
Yes, to explain, because
Are
they
there
heard
names
about
I know?
the names, yes. Elkin, Bennett, the minister, the lady Gamliel, and Lieberman. And Lieberman actually was for many years talking about the cantons, which is more or less the same,
Exactly.
the same idea. So yes, they invited me, and it's not a secret. Some Knesset members as well. It is in the air because once in a while Israel is mentioned. However, in order to understand it, you need to understand the nature and the culture of societies in the Middle East.
Yes, but
unfortunately,
are you telling me Israelis who are in the Knesset don't understand the Arab society?
Unfortunately not. Because 2 things. First of all, Israelis do not learn Arabic. And in order really to delve into the Arabic societies, you need Arabic. What can I do? This is, you cannot understand the culture without its language. You cannot understand Americans without English. You cannot understand the French without French. Okay, unfortunately, Israelis do not study Arabic in enough as I think. They learn English, French, Italian, Spanish.
It is a mistake, isn't it?
Of course, big mistake, because we live in the Middle East, for good and for bad. And we have to deal with the Middle East with its language. Don't forget that for Arabs, if somebody speaks to them in English, they view him as a colonialist. It reminds them of the British. And we Israelis don't get it because we think that English is the international language. Arabs see it in a different way. So when I speak to them, look, I met also with sheikhs, with leaders in the Judea and Samaria, in the cities, and they have nothing in principle against it. The only thing they say, hey, take those thugs which you guys brought from Tunisia, means the PA,
Yes.
and kick them away before you talk to us, because you gave them the power, you gave them the weapons, you gave them the money. So what do you want us now, to fight them? So, first of all, undo the mistake which you guys did in 1993 by bringing terrorists to control the people, and we'll take responsibility to them out.
That's not going to happen, is it?
No, what? Yes, it will. I tell you
will?
why. Because after Abbas, and soon he will leave in a way or another. There is a good possibility, good chance, that there will be a chaos, because the Fatah do not know what they want. Hamas are threatening them, and Israel will have to step in order to take control over the West Bank. And this is the opportunity to follow this line of Emirates, means to deal with every city, to deal with the nobility of every city, because those people, have the authority and they have a responsibility. Because they are notables, they are the sheikhs, they are not like,
Okay.
people in our societies.
Do you imagine the world community would sanction this idea? Because what you're not giving us is a Palestinian state. These emirates and cantons are not the same as one state. In people's minds at the moment, the Palestinian people deserve a state of their own. Will the Western world, will the world communities, will the United Nations ever endorse the kind of plan you're describing?
Well, what happens is that the world, at the end of the day, accepts things which work. If, let's say, Israel starts with Hebron, and Hebron is a very unique society, they have their own mindset, they are different from the others. Israel takes the sheikhs of Hebron and say, hey guys, we go out, these are your borders. You take responsibility, and if you need something, call us, we'll help you. You need what? Access to the sea, we'll give you. You need access to Ben Gurion Airport, you can get. What else you need? You need the electric transformers, tell us what you need and we'll support. Means, to be fair, you need some, factories for leather as they had in the beginning. Okay, start. We'll put some customs on products which come from China with no customs. We'll, higher the price so we can work and gain some money and work and live. Live and let live. If Israel works with them in a fair way, which of live and let live, they will understand that Israel is not their enemy, which Israel is not actually, and they can live with us, near us, by us, through us. They can.
Okay.
Everything
And how does? Okay. And you think the Western
it
world
will
would
work.
accept it?
Once it works, the world will understand that this is the only thing.
Okay. And coming back to where we began, these individual emirates, would they be governed or led or controlled by people who would not need the Muslim mentality of this was once Muslim land? If it's once Muslim land, no infidel, especially a Jewish infidel, has the right to have any piece of it. Would the people who would be in these various emirates, would they be at that point willing to leave Israel alone?
Well, Islam has a very established way how to live with enemies, infidels or Jews who are too powerful. They hope for a better day. They control their daily life, hoping, keeping it as some kind of a dream for the future. So far, Israel, that's what we call hudna, or temporary peace. This is based on a precedent which already Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, gave to the infidels of Mecca. He gave them peace for 10 years. He breached it after 2 years. Okay, They know, they have all kinds of mechanisms, especially the Hudaybiyah peace, as they call it, to give peace to entities which are too powerful, too dangerous to mess with. So, if Israel is viewed as too powerful and too dangerous to mess with, they will understand it and give us temporary peace. Now, as long as Israel will be invincible, powerful, and too dangerous to mess with, we will have temporary peace forever. If Israel is invincible forever.
I understand. You have been kind enough to say you will stay and do another program with me.
Mark
So
Andrews.
we're only pausing, okay? Take a moment to pause. On L'chaim, what a great honor and privilege it is to speak with Professor Mordechai Kedar, Israel's preeminent scholar in Arabic literature and in the Muslim Palestinian mentality. And again, Mordechai is affiliated with Bar Ilan University and speaks often throughout the United States, and it is always fabulous to have him on this table. So if you want to hear more, you're with us next time. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me in the meantime with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed by Mordechai Kedar in this edition of L'chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.